Thank you and welcome to the final panel. You've already met me through that video, and I was going to say some things about robotics and artificial intelligence because that's what I've been thinking about for the last week. And I really admired the way that Kirk, you spoke about disruptive technologies and how we're introducing new technologies and new innovation, but also that it's about the human side. Because a lot of things that came out of thinking about robotics and artificial intelligence over the last couple of weeks for me is really those are applicable when things are repeatable, when they're predictable, when it's a series of known analysis. And yet what we're talking about here are none of those things. Learning shouldn't be predictable. Work doesn't need to be predictable. And certainly empathy, as you talked about, Nina, doesn't need to be predictable. And so I'm on the lookout of weak signals of change for how we work as humans and how we work as a human society. And in this panel, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking with you, our collaborators, our future collaborators and our friends, with people who are making some of those very human changes in the way that we work and in the way that we lead new ways of thinking and new ways of working. So I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves, starting with you, John.
Yeah, I'm John Spoehr. I'm the Director of the Australian Industrial Transformation Institute at Flinders University.
Thank you.
And my name is Rowe. I'm from Adelaide Bike Kitchen. We are a collective of bike nerds who help people fix their own bicycles in a community setting.
Thank you. And Declan.
My name is Declan Daniels. I'm currently in Year 10 at Trinity College North. I participated in, graduated twice and became an ambassador for Children's University.
Fantastic. Thank you. We just heard about the Children's University from Warren Bebbington. And so what we really want to do today is speak with John and Reb and Declan about what it's like to be working in different modes of thinking, about what it's like to be creating new futures, and what some of the opportunities that we might be able to develop in thinking about how we work in South Australia. So I might start with you, John, just to give us a bit of a context, if you like, about what are some of the changes we're seeing and what are some of the trends and ideas that are emerging.
Yeah, thanks, Kristin. I think the starting point is what the Premier said about this very simple idea, and that is that openness fosters creativity. And if we take that a little further and link it to some of the presentations we've had so far, creativity fosters innovation, and innovation fosters prosperity. So in many ways, what we're talking about here today is fundamental to the transformation challenge that South Australia has going ahead. We all recognise there are very substantial challenges for the state, particularly as we go into 2018 with the closure of the auto industry, but equally we see some really wonderful opportunities ahead if we are timely in the way in which we respond to them, if we accelerate responses to grow new industries in the face of these challenges. So that simple idea, openness fosters creativity, I think is very, very important. And what I've observed here in South Australia is this quiet revolution, and actually I'm rethinking that now because I see so many people here, hundreds of people who are interested in what we've got to discuss today, and that surprises me a little because what's happened, I think, over the last 6 or 7 years is this growth in the design-led thinking, co-design, collaborative movement, if I can put it that way. And some time ago I looked at how many of these co-design or co-labs facilities existed across South Australia, and I was very surprised to discover there were about 60 of them across Adelaide, in the north of Adelaide, in the south of Adelaide, and many of them in the heart of Adelaide. So there are lots of people quietly working away, not necessarily here today, not part of this bigger conversation, but they are part of what I call an underground disruptive movement that's operating very effectively in cyberspace, and it's enabled by the massive advances in information and communications technology that make things possible, not just within our own state, but possible nationally and across borders. A creative milieu, a creative ecosystem that's much bigger than the one that exists here in South Australia, one that we're connected to, and one that we need to understand much better.
I'm not sure if you describe yourself as underground necessarily, Reb, but when we were talking about Bike Kitchen, it did sound like it had a very, collaborative co-design, even if it's not quite the way you'd word it. Can you tell us a little bit more about Adelaide Bike Kitchen?
Yeah, so we started up simply by sending out an email asking for people who were interested in bikes and whether they could envisage a space an open space where people would come in and learn basic bike mechanics. so that when something went wrong with their bike, they wouldn't choose to drive the car to work, that they could make that small tweak themselves and keep riding. That's our main ambition. So with this email, we expected just to get a few people out to our first meeting, but we got 80 people who were all sort of not just friends, they were just perhaps acquaintances. The word spread. And so that was initially quite surprising because we didn't expect that. And none of us really knew what we were doing either. So from that point, we all learnt as Bike Kitchen grew. We got a group of about 12 real core people involved in setting the Bike Kitchen up, becoming incorporated. And from that point on, we were all learning from that point. So none of us, we're non-hierarchical. We have a committee of about 10 people. It fluctuates depending on who's travelling. And from that point, we just have roles that we fulfil, and we try to keep them circling so that no one is doing one particular thing. We're all about sharing, and even how we operate. We have our volunteers who are sharing their ideas and that knowledge onto the people who are coming in. So it's a skill share, it's upskilling basically.
Yes, I like the way that we've picked up already on those ideas around coming in as a cooperative or coming in within a different structure, and also picking up again what you were saying, Kirk, around sort of continuing learning and having learning embedded in the process of the work that you're doing. Which leads me nicely to you, Declan. So I wanted you to explain to us a little bit more about your involvement with the Children's University and what you've been doing there.
Children's University is an organisation affiliated with the University of Adelaide. It provides opportunities for children to be recognised for their learning outside of the classroom in lots of different fun ways, in the hope that children will strive to be their best and eventually go to university. I was involved in many ways and did lots of different activities at various learning destinations. Through CU, I got to learn coding. I also got recognition for all the time I spent doing sport, but the best thing was graduating at the Adelaide University.
Can you tell us about that? So that was a graduation ceremony that recognised the learning that you'd done plus your other activities, is that
Yes,
how?
yeah.
Yep. And how many of you were involved in that graduation?
I believe about 150,
Okay.
maybe a bit more. No.
Yeah, fantastic. No, I think that's really interesting. And you also were talking a little bit around your role as an ambassador. So can you tell us a little bit more about the activities that you've been leading or what that ambassador role has meant for you?
I got to experience leadership through organising and running CU accredited learning activities for younger students. I ran sporting activities, science experiments and cooking classes. I found that being a good leader required patience and good communication skills to give clear instructions. As I was working with younger kids, I needed to ensure they wanted to do the activity, otherwise I noticed they would not participate. So I needed to be flexible and change so that it would suit them. CU is an innovative way to get people involved in leadership because it's taking the concept of university where you get to choose what you learn and putting it into a kid-friendly environment. CU enables all children to learn leadership skills by taking control of their learning.
That is great. Thank you for explaining that so well, and also picking up on what Nina said earlier, which is around engaging people on their own terms. And you were talking about how you might appear in a village in Ghana, and I really like the way that you talked about how you need to find ways to connect with younger people to make sure that they're motivated to be a part of it and that they want to participate. And I think that's really important for when we're thinking about trying to get people to engage in new projects and new ways of doing things, is around engaging people on their own terms. And you've also talked a little bit about choice and agency there in terms of how can you choose your learning path and how can you be an active participant. Which I'd like to go back to you then, Reb, because one of the things that we discussed previously was around actually how do you get people on board? There's no hierarchy. You've got a big group of people who are interested, and yet you're run by volunteers. So how do you do that?
It is a good question. A lot of it is fumbling through in the dark, and hopefully people understand and have that patience, kind of like what you talked about, is about, at least if you're clear and open to people. So let them know that this is a big experiment. We're not pretending to be the professional. We're not hiding anything, essentially. So people understand that and they know where we're coming from. And it takes the pressure off of them as well. they know that they're not going to be, so long as they're respectful, they're not going to be under judgment or any sort of uncomfortable sort of scenarios like that. So it's about welcoming people in a very family way. So we approach people who come through our door as if they were mates. So we introduce them, we welcome them, and we let them know that, you know, even if you want to be involved in the space in a very small way, this is a small task that you can do. But if you want to be involved more, this is kind of this is a path you can take. And having people know their expectations as well is really important, because then they can feel comfortable, and it's about breaking down intimidation.
So if someone wanders into your space, how do you get them involved in that bigger way?
Usually they've come to do something in the first instance. So we have a very open policy about asking questions, and no question is a dumb question, basically. We have people who don't know how to use a spanner, those sorts of things, and they're the people who we want. And our volunteer mechanics are fantastic at just being patient and communicating what needs to be done in order for this person to get the best outcome. And I think people really appreciate that we're essentially there to help them, and they really do want to give back. And I think that's, we kind of play on that a little bit, because that's really how we keep rolling. Like if we see that there's someone who wants to give back a little bit, we'll eke it out as much as possible, but in a fun way. So we're not making people do things that they don't want to do. Generally, people do want to do it, but it's chasing that energy. You've got to be very good at picking up on where that person could provide some help and really asking them for it.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, that comes back to what we said earlier, John, and what the Premier said is about openness building creativity, but also I like here that when we're talking about openness, it's also building trust and building a sense of belonging and building a sense of being part of things. You also said that, you know, you started that not really knowing what you were doing. So how do you find the support to then build something that can be sustainable and can, you know, have a longevity around it?
I guess we've got a committee of 10 people, and so that's 10 dedicated people who are helping to keep that space rolling. I definitely couldn't do it by myself. I'm secretary of Bike Kitchen, but that's, you know, a very small answering emails portion. I'm not a bike mechanic, so each person plays a really key role. But also being open to what support they can provide you. So we're very, very lucky in being involved in Adelaide City Council's Social Ventures Incubator Program. This is an 8-session program which is helping us get a business model, which we don't know business at all. So we're learning business words, and it's been fantastic, because things that we were doing, which we didn't really know was the right thing to do, turns out that we're doing all right. And we've been involved, we've been at Bike Kitchen since 2012, and we do weekly programs, weekly workshops, and we haven't missed one in that whole time. So we are doing something right, but it's nice to know that we're doing something right because, you know, we're following some form of program, but we just didn't know it. Yeah. So now we're getting new ideas about how we can change and essentially keep offering this service. So that support from other people and just being open to receiving donations and help. Again, it comes back to being genuine and genuinely appreciating people. And we hold volunteer appreciation and donate appreciation nights just to give back to the people who keep us running, basically. We're not there to make a profit, so we want to share what we can.
And I like that idea about being open to receiving help, because that's really around what collaboration is about. It's actually about bringing those things in. What about you, Declan? Where have you received support for the activities you've been doing with the Children's University?
My support has come from a mixture of my mum and the guidance from CU, and also my coaches at my tennis club. Through these supports, I have seen leadership in action, been able to try difficult and new things myself, and use the skills gained from CU to lead my tennis team. Support is really important for leaders, because you make mistakes and sometimes you need to bounce ideas and hear opinions so you can lead effectively. Sometimes when you lead, it doesn't work, so you need others to help you figure it out.
Great. And I like the way that you're talking about the leadership that you might have developed through the Children's University and how that's now leading the tennis team and how you might then be providing role models to the other children that you talked about earlier in terms of coming through. But that support you get from others is really important. John, from your perspective, what does the state need in terms of support to work in these new different ways? So Reb's been talking about new cooperative models, Declan's talking about getting leadership skills and having, ambassador roles very early on to demonstrate something new, which will give him the skills to develop new ideas himself later. What else do we need, or what are you seeing that's having an effect that might be useful for the future economy and our future society?
Well, we certainly can't overestimate the importance of leadership, and I think we've seen that on display here today. A range of contributors who, all in their own ways, are providing leadership through what they do, and we know that through enlightened leadership and different forms of leadership, and what I mean by that is more inclusive forms of leadership, not the hierarchical models that we're used to in the past, but much more inclusive, shared models of leadership are fundamentally important to ensuring the transformation or the transition to the new economy that we so desperately need to do. And so here in South Australia we've had some, I think, very successful experiments in that, and the Governor's Leadership Foundation is a great example, I think, of an initiative that we could build on, expand upon, make more accessible to a wider range of people in the community. So at the moment it's focused on those who are, really, I suppose, the highest performers in their own workplaces. But I think we need to diffuse that. We need to make it more accessible to a wider range of people who in their own ways are leaders in their communities, either leaders in social ventures or leaders in enterprises, leaders in schools. So that investing in leadership is fundamentally important to the success of the open state model.
That's really helpful. I wanted to sort of finish on talking about how leading these sorts of programs and doing things differently creates benefits beyond what you might have expected. Because I think that's the other thing that we're doing here, and I think maybe it was your video, Fiona, where you talked about complex systems, and where you start in trying to solve a complex problem is not necessarily where you end up. So, Reb, has there been, I know we talked earlier, there are a couple of interesting things that seem to come out of Bike Kitchen that weren't expected probably when you set it up.
Yeah, so I guess through reaching out and building this community, we've had an opportunity for us to share support and provide support to each other. So from the Bike Kitchen committee and a few people who've been coming in, we've had 4 businesses who have started in the bike area, which while they might have started and they might have continued anyway, I think as a result of Bike Kitchen and the community that was built around that, these ideas and these businesses have started a lot sooner than perhaps they probably would have, and I think they are very successful because of the support that they've received, and perhaps it's just interesting to show how if you're giving someone the opportunity to learn and to put these ideas into place, perhaps innovate and give them the confidence to do new things, that's where we start to see payoffs coming out. So Bike Kitchen in itself is rolling and it's doing its thing, but then there's people making their own way with the skills that they've learnt from that, and that's where we see broader good.
And what about you, Declan? What are some of the broader benefits you've seen from your involvement or things that you've had effects on?
I think that through my involvement in CU, with the large number of hours I've achieved, plus the leadership skills I've learned, I've helped younger kids see what they can do too. I've even had multiple kids come up to me and say, I want to do what you did. I like to believe that through what I have learned, I have inspired others to do the same and make choices to learn about the things that interest them. I think that learning to be a leader as a child will help me to be a better leader as an adult.
Thank you, I agree. And I think those illustrate some of the themes that we've been talking about in terms of how to mentor and how to lead, things around lifelong learning and things certainly around openness, which is what Open State's all about. So finally to you, John, what do you see the important lessons are for South Australia in adopting some of these principles and finding these newer approaches? Is there anything you'd like to reflect on to wrap us up?
Oh, absolutely. We're at the beginning, I think, of a major transformation that I think is very nicely encapsulated in this idea of the open state. The challenge for us is to persist, is to provide the support to Reb and Declan and to the many entrepreneurs, social venturists and those who want to have a go in a way that ensures that they're able to maintain continuity of effort over time. So often in Australia we provide support for the short term. We expect results within a year or within 2 years. We've got to be much more patient and with our leaders, much more patient in the way in which we think about transformation, because great transformations, sustainable transformations take 5, 10, 15 years. So that ultimately requires bipartisanship, doesn't it? We've got to have everyone coming along on this journey together. We've got to see this above party political politics.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that, actually, because I think what's excited me about this afternoon is it is around those new ways of thinking, but also recognising that we're already doing it. And I think this panel and the previous speakers have been talking about what we are already doing, and that, you know, if we persist and we provide support and we keep talking about it and we keep sharing those ideas and keep challenging us to take that next step. And I think that comes back nicely to what the Premier said when he opened us this afternoon, which is around having a bias for action. So Open State is all around having those ways of thinking and looking at collaboration and innovation and ideas and enterprise, but it's because of the bias for action, and because by doing that we'll actually create benefits that we all enjoy. So thank you very much, and I'll now hand over to Sharon McKay to give us the final word on Open State.
It's okay. Sit down. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Thank you, Kristin. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Declan and Reb and John. And also thank you to Nina and Kirk and Sarah and Gail and, of course, the Premier who spoke earlier. But most of all, thank you to everyone here that's come along and listened today, especially to those of you who are hosting events during Open State in October. As you know, Open State's a platform. It's over to you. You're hosting, your events, and I think the most important thing that we can do now is to start talking about it so that everyone knows what's happening in spring. I wanted to ask everyone if you could do 2 things for me. The first thing I would love you to do after this is to go and troll around that website. The program is rich. It's being added to daily, so don't just go there once. Go there lots of times. There's a lot of events in there, and I think there's something that will be of interest to everybody. But I do want you to know that a lot of the events aren't actually live yet. So if you all want to go away and book tickets, I'm really sorry, you probably can't. You have to probably wait a little bit of time for some of those events to come on Eventbrite. And then the other thing that I really wanted you to do was to go away and tell a friend, tell your mum, tell your brother and sister, tell a couple of people. Make sure you tell someone from interstate. If you've got overseas friends, tell them as well. What we really want is all eyes on Adelaide in October, and that's going to rely on us making sure that everybody knows that it's happening. It's been great to see what's happening on Twitter and social media today, and I think we're trending within like 5 minutes of today starting. So I'm going to just end and say thanks again. Have a great afternoon, and see you in October in spring. Thanks.